Now another short-term and long-term solution is a technique which was given by a man who lived 300 years before Christ. His name was Patanjali, who lived in India. And it's a very simple technique, and he says, bring to mind the opposite emotion of the one that you have. Just if you can stop for a minute and think, what is the opposite of what I am feeling? For example, if I am feeling fear, then I may ask, here, what is the opposite of fear here? It could be courage, it could be faith, it could be love, it could be peace, it could be understanding. So for each of us, in each moment, the opposite of a negative emotion could be something different, depending on why I am feeling what I am feeling. So if I'm feeling anger, and I ask myself, what is the opposite of anger in this case? It could be understanding, it could be love, it could be peace, it could be faith, it could be forgiveness. So we want to see what is the opposite of the emotion that I have at this moment. Now, this is not a form of suppression. I'm not saying that I don't have anger. I'm not saying that I don't have fear. They exist, and I recognize their existence. The whole thing is that each of us is like a radio, and the radio can turn into a number of stations. So in me, I have many stations. I have the stations of guilt, and stations of fear, and stations of love, and of understanding and hurt. And I have the station called the victim, and the station called the interrogator. So I have all these aspects of my being. I am none of these. I am a witness, or a part of my mind, which is observing that in each case, now the mind is fearing, now the mind is angry, now the mind is hurt, now the mind is loving, now the mind is peaceful. But there's someone behind the mind. There's some kind of consciousness behind and above the mind, which is able to observe the fact that the mind is in these states and can talk about it. So I cannot be what I am observing. I cannot be something I can observe. I have to be something separate from what I'm observing. Otherwise, I can't observe it. Okay? So I cannot be my anger. I cannot be my hurt. I can get totally immersed in it. I can get lost in it, but I am not it. So if I want, and I don't control myself in some way, I can allow my consciousness to be totally enveloped in fear, and I can panic, or enveloped in anger, and I can hate. I can just destroy things. So the idea is that, okay, I have these emotions, but I also have other possibilities in myself. And I choose at this moment, at this particular moment, to strengthen this aspect of my being, the aspect which is called understanding, the aspect which is called faith, which is called love, you see, or forgiveness. That doesn't mean that the other part goes away. It just means that I am strengthening this part. So I may feel like at this moment, it's not useful for me to fear or be angry. If I do this, I'm going to get in some kind of interaction. I'm going to make decisions which I will regret afterwards. So I tune into the opposite emotion. I try to connect with that opposite emotion, cultivate it, and then at another time, I can do my analysis and say, okay, today I was feeling fear, I was feeling anger. What was my belief? What was the stimulus? So we need to go back and check out what happened, so that we're not just suppressing ourselves and creating a split personality. Okay? Because it's easy to create a split personality in spiritual life, because we can develop these spiritual concepts and believe that we have overcome a lot of things, and then there can be other parts of ourselves governed by the inner child, which we'll talk about in a further session, which are still controlled by our feelings as children. Okay? So we bring the opposite to our minds, but eventually at some later time we analyze what happened. We try to find the beliefs.